Chapter 2, A Gift of Passion, 2004. I pondered on Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11, until I found some consolation and hope. I printed out the scripture and taped it to my cubicle at work. I would read it daily and throughout the day to keep my mind from reverting to the past. I realized that I was falling into a depression and I was trying to fight it with all my heart. I remembered my cousin Nella, who lived in California, telling me that she had met a prophetess over the phone. I reached out to hear a word from God by asking for a prayer. I called Nella to connect the call via three-way to Sister Hopewell. I was on my break at work and had informed Nella that I couldn't stay on the phone long. Sister Hopewell started praying. She was able to pick up on some of the things that weighed heavily on my heart. After I got off the phone, I felt some deep encouragement. I was leery about dealing with prophets after hearing many stories about how they have misused their gift. The next morning was Saturday, and while I was sleeping, I heard a voice say, "I will create in you a new spirit." I just laid there and waited patiently to hear more. Immediately, I knew that it had to be God because of the day before. I couldn't wait to call Nella. While speaking to Nella, we used three-way and asked Sister Hopewell to join us on the call. I wanted to share the experience that I had had with God. I was excited because it was confirmation that God was trying to get my attention, but I was too busy running and hanging out at the nightclubs. I was so amazed and fixated on that moment when I heard those words from God. I pondered knowing that God had not forgotten me. It felt liberating. I found joy and peace that entire day. I was on cloud 9, and I felt that I could face mountains. Once I came off cloud 9 and the excitement settled in my heart, I started walking on eggshells because I wanted to hear more from God. I became mindful of my actions and behavior. I fought very hard to eliminate negative thoughts that would enter my mind. I wanted to know more, so I contacted Sister Hopewell to pray for me again, and that's when it all started. She told me that I knew what God wanted me to do. I wasn't clear about what God wanted because I was battling with acute depression. There was no way that I could begin to understand what she was sincerely talking about. The prior 2 years I had started writing Rhythm of Rage, but I had not finished it yet. As soon as I started dating Shamir, I was able to write only 4 pages during the entire year. I had completely lost my focus. I prayed and asked the Lord to lead and guide me to what it was that He wanted me to do. Some time had passed before I received some revelation from Sister Hopewell's prophecy that God wanted me to continue writing Rhythm of Rage. One day during a phone conversation, Sister Hopewell asked me to send her one of my writings. I did not know what she was referring to because I had only disclosed my poems to a few people. In actuality, I had originally intended for my writings to be songs. Not once did I ever think that it would turn into such an art of poetry. As I pondered about what she was asking for, I got on my knees and looked underneath my bed and reached for the poems. I blew the dust off the wrinkled papers and began to read them. I made a conscious decision to send her the one titled Mercy on Me. I sent it in the form of a bookmark. I wanted to impress her, so I laminated it and colored the words with a pretty font along with my testimony. The day Sister Hopewell received the package, she called. She expressed how the words touched her. I was honored and delighted to hear such compliments from a stranger. She prophesied about how great God is and how He kept me. She said that I am blessed to have the gift of writing about the mysteries of God. Shortly after speaking to her during the month of April 2004, I began to see several visions in my sleep. The Lord began to show me pages of writings, and the words were in cursive. It was vivid. He began to whisper softly to my spirit throughout the following days and nights about different titles and what to write. I remained in touch with Sister Hopewell to testify how real God was by showing me the writings. She would get worked up as her voice changed over the phone. She witnessed how the Lord brought her and her family through many storms and trauma from her past. I listened quietly to hear the messages of inspiration, as well as thanking God for sparing her through so much. She would urge me to write when the Lord revealed what He wanted me to write. In her words, it did not matter what time of the hour, whether it's at midnight or 4 a.m., get up and write. I felt the urgency from her and became diligently focused. I was writing Rhythm of Rage, working overtime, raising my son Jacob, and seeking time with the Lord. It seemed as though I was under a spell as I took the necessary steps to have my work copyright. I sent Sister Hopewell several packages of bookmarks of what God was giving me to write. While sharing testimonies and bonding with Sister Hopewell, I admit that it took me a while to get used to listening to the tone of her raspy voice. She was a woman in her late 40s. As time went on, she became very comfortable expressing herself over the phone. The conversations would start out with encouraging words about God as she expressed her life experiences and some of the things that she was praying to God for. I was still unsure about how much of my life I wanted to disclose. Although she had the gift of prophecy and had spoken some things to me about my life that were somewhat true, it still did not assure me that I could confide in her the things that God was revealing to me, because there was something about her that cautioned me to wait. During some of our conversations, Sister Hopewell would use vulgar language, and in an indirect way, her connotations were sexual, regarding a man's and woman's intimate parts. Then she would twist it around by saying that God made man and woman and that God has a penis and He could take care of what anybody needed. It took me some time to discern why she would divert to using such dirty words while she prayed and talked about how good God was. She was battling with the spirit of perversion. The life that she lived was pretty hard, having had her first child around the age 14 and never gaining her mother's approval or love to enhance her self-esteem. She grew up in poverty, journeyed down a promiscuous path with various men, drinking alcohol, going to nightclubs, and seeking love in all the wrong places. It eventually led her to having more children, while enduring an abusive marriage that she ended up fleeing for her life. Oftentimes, I could hear the pain in her voice as I felt the tears in her eyes. She was seeking deliverance and someone that illuminated the light of hope. In the beginning, I was excited to send her some of the writings that God was birthing out of me. But as time went on, she started to abuse my kindness. I started feeling pressured by her because she said that the people she came in contact were hurt and needed to read an encouraging word from God. She stated that she had passed my bookmarks out to the people at the bus and train terminals, along the highways and byways. I felt blessed to hear the responses, and sometimes I even got the chance to speak with some of the people over the phone. It was heartwarming to listen to the testimonies of how God was working in the lives of others. Sister Hopewell's dream was to establish a safe haven center for women and children that are victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, seeking safety and refuge from broken homes and the streets. However, lacking the funds and the grants to launch her dream was not successful at the time. Meanwhile, she opened her home up to many strangers by providing soup lines and cookouts to feed the people and by distributing clothing that was donated and other miscellaneous items while ministering to the people's spiritual needs. My cousin Nella had the opportunity to visit one of her cookouts. She expressed her passion for helping women that are in prison and people from all walks of life. I admired her courage and believed in her efforts and drive as she persevered. She had a fixed income with only a little to support the cause, and the rest was donated in honor of her having the capacity to speak on behalf of those who are less fortunate with little education and the know-how to survive on their own. Somehow I became entangled in her dream. She was never satisfied with the amount of bookmarks that I sent. I confided in a friend regarding the matter. I began to wonder if Sister Hopewell was selling the bookmarks because she would call me within a few days of receiving what I sent and request more. I could hear the urgency and excitement in her voice, but I wanted to tell her that she needed to use discretion on how many she should give away. The bookmarks and inspirations were new to me as well. I felt excited about my gift too. During the creation process, I had no idea that my bookmarks had evolved enough to be presented to the market as a commodity. I started thinking about what it took to achieve the finished product and realized that I needed to regain control over my concept. Since I did not have the courage to say it to her, I suppressed my feelings about it. At the time, I was experiencing some unpleasant issues at work. A new supervisor came on board. He began harassing me about my abilities and questioning my confidence in doing my work. I began to pray and discuss the matter with Sister Hopewell. She would pray aloud and speak what she believed the Lord was revealing to her spirit about the situation. I felt comforted by her words of encouragement and inspiration. Sometimes a stranger can give you hope when you think that there's no way that you're going to make it through the storm. One morning, I remember waking and having a conversation with God about my work. I felt that the workload was becoming a bit extreme. I was always willing to take on more responsibilities because I thought that meant job security. I had survived approximately 5 layoffs. I never feared that I would be out of work because I had so much paperwork on my desk that was being generated daily. I was the point of contact for the attorneys that I supported. Without a doubt, I assumed that they wouldn't get rid of me because they were not going to do the menial tasks that I was hired to do. Therefore, I would give it my all to remain indispensable. However, I do believe that anyone can be expendable. Days before I realized that I was nearing my performance review, I became more anxious. I woke one morning telling the Lord that I'm not quitting my job. If they're not happy with me, they are going to have to fire me. I was becoming defensive about the matter. On another occasion, I remember waking one morning and contemplating the thoughts of being fired or forced out of my job. The Lord spoke to my spirit, "Stay humble." I received his words with humility and fear. I could not believe that intuitively the Lord was directing me through the situation. I recall on the morning of having my performance review, I suddenly remembered the vision that I had the night before. I was being taped on the Oprah Winfrey Show. I saw myself speaking on the subject of abuse, among other images in the background. It was so vivid that I could feel some of the emotions and the body language that I had exemplified during that moment. I woke smiling because I believed that God was showing me a sign about my future. I was so amazed by God's love and grace. While having my performance review, I could tell that it wasn't going too well. My supervisor took the tone of intimidating me by using words that I wasn't used to hearing around the office. He was proper, but I could tell that he wanted me to succumb to his authority. He also made comparisons between my work and working with other professional administrative assistants. I responded with humility, but I stood my ground. I dwelled on my strengths as he threw darts to attack me, where he identified my weaknesses. I did not run nor did I back down. I remained calm because I knew something that he did not know. I serve a mighty God, and he was sitting right there listening. I was calm, although I did feel myself getting angry because I could see where things were heading. In the split of the moment, my mind drifted back to the dream. It could not have been more real, seeing myself on the Oprah Winfrey Show, which was captivating while I kept my composure. While looking over my papers to sign my review, there was a lower rating for a class training that was required, but I had taken it prior to my supervisor's employment. However, the correction was made because the rating was changed. At that point, I felt irritated by it and wanted to ask him about it, but I decided to leave it alone. In fact, nothing could take my joy away. On May 4th, 2004, I was ecstatic that I began to share some of my inspirations with fellow acquaintances at work. I was in awe at how blessed I was and how things were being revealed to me. An acquaintance copied a tape of an inspiring speech by a world-renowned speaker, Earl Nightingale, The Strangest Secret. I received it with great anticipation and appreciation. I couldn't wait to get home and settle into bed that evening to listen to it. I became addicted to following Earl's 30-day program. The requirement was to think positive thoughts for 30 days. If you start to think negative, you had to start all over again and count from there as day one. Earl's philosophy states, what a man thinks about, that is what he becomes. I listened intently to receive the best results. I even wrote down my goals that were pertaining to my new path. I envisioned everything that God was revealing to me. A few years ago, I started having some vivid dreams about my life, and it became intense to me. When I would wake, I could still feel the same emotions during the dream. Therefore, I started writing about my experiences in a journal. As time went on, I would add new information. I had an epiphany of what I wanted more than ever in my life. I wanted to continue to hear God's voice and please Him with all my heart. I also wanted to be happy and have the blessings that were prophesied over my life. After the 30 days, I fell passionately in love with God. I was walking around in a daze at work and driving my car feeling as though I was under a trance. I did not understand the transformation that was taking place. I had had an experience with God in my past when I was a little girl, around 9 years of age, but not on this level. To my understanding, it felt as though I was in love. A strong, warm feeling grew within me. The feeling did catch me by surprise. I found myself daydreaming and thinking to myself, what on earth is happening to me? All kinds of thoughts crossed my finite mind. I was drifting along the shores of life. I was so mesmerized about how good I was feeling that I compared it to a person who fiends for drugs. People at work would stop me to ask why I'm smiling and why do I have a glow. I would smile back at times and just blush. I remember blushing and engaging in dialogue with another acquaintance at work. The whole experience was unforgettable and intoxicating. During the first day that I had experienced that incredible life transformation, I laid down on my bed that evening to close my eyes and dream about my future. I never wanted the feeling to cease. I had enough courage to face tomorrow. The second day, while I was at work, there it was again, that strong urge bursting through my heart. It started throbbing and pounding more. I stood still at my desk. It felt like some type of power that had immersed my entire soul. I wanted to give into it, but immediately the thought came to me that I was at work. I bowed my head at my desk and quietly allowed my mind to think. I tried to reason with it alone, but then I thought that I needed to talk to someone. I did not want my coworkers to think that I was cracking up or having an illusion of some sort. I could no longer hold the feeling inside without it showing. I wanted to share what I was feeling with someone who believed in God as deeply as I did. I remember calling a coworker that worked in another department to meet me. I quietly got up from my desk as I headed toward the cafeteria. We met and I began to tell him about the experience. As I sat there, I contemplated about how I was feeling. I started blushing because I lost my composure while trying to get the words out. As we started talking, he related to me some of his experiences with God. He shared some of his favorite Bible scriptures. Suddenly, I confessed that it was confirmation to hear him speak of Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 2. I had just written my list of goals during the 30-day program that I had been following. I petitioned my request to the Lord in regards to my faith and purpose. I was in awe about the whole conversation. I felt that it was divine. It is always nice to work around God-fearing people that believe in the presence and power of God wherever they are placed. During the next week, while I was driving my car to work, I began to smell gasoline. Although the fumes were mild, as the week progressed, the fumes got stronger. The next morning, while driving to work, I parked my car. Then I opened my car door, and the smell of chemicals and gas frightened me. As I got out of the car to walk toward the front entrance of my work area, the gasoline fumes followed me. I started praying and asking God to show me what was wrong. I asked one of the maintenance guys at work what they thought the problem could be. Then I went back to my car to see if there was a leakage. There was no dripping on the pavement. I didn't know what to do because the car's dashboard did not have any warning lights flickering. It was baffling to my mind as to what it could be. I decided to check around with different mechanics to inspect my car. On my way home that evening after work, I stopped off to buy some fast food at the drive-thru window at Wendy's. When my car became idle, fumes rushed from the rear of the car toward the front. I panicked and feared at any moment for the worst to happen, a fire or something horrible. When I parked the car at home, I started inspecting the matter. I got down on my knees and saw that gasoline was leaking underneath the car. The gasoline lines had rusted and cracked. The strangest thing was that the dashboard never signaled any warning. Not even the slightest indication showing how much gasoline had burned during the time. I had my car towed to the mechanic, and the man that did the inspection told me that I was lucky that my car did not catch fire. On top of that, if someone was within so many feet of smoking a cigarette, I could have gone up in flames. I started thanking God even more. Through this incident, I was blessed with a better car. While I was driving my new car, I saw other motorists throwing cigarettes out the window. I immediately opened my mouth to say, "Thank you, Jesus." I could have been dead weeks ago. I often reflect back on miracles like these to give God my praise. I know that my life belongs to Him. I could never live on my own strength or understanding alone because I know that God is the one who has given me the foresight to reach my destination. While battling with my emotions and crying through the process of writing Rhythm of Rage, it was very painful to relive the abuse. I needed closure and strength to face what happened to me in the past. I wanted some understanding and revelation so that I could remain focused on where my life was heading. I started to feel the hurt, rejection, and the things that caused me to have low self-esteem. I learned to conceal how I felt about my new supervisor. I sensed he was trying to do the same. I did detect there was a nervousness at times when he would have a general conversation with me about his hobbies and family. The tension was obvious because I wanted to get along with him, but I didn't trust his motives or what to think of it. My supervisor became adamant about me working overtime because he felt that it was an advantage for me to make the extra money, since learning that I was a single parent. Therefore, he abruptly asked me to stop the overtime. It turned out to be a blessing in disguise because it freed up time for me to concentrate on writing my manuscript and focus on my life purpose. I had never lived off the overtime money. I spent it joyfully and bought things that I really did not need or use. Earlier that year, I had moved into a one-bedroom apartment to save money. I had mapped out a plan to save and to simplify my life to reduce as much stress as possible. I had learned to live within my means. When it came down to having my independence and peace of mind, I knew that I did not have to have the extravagant things or lifestyle that some women easily fall prey to. I would rather be able to eat steak or treat myself and my son to a nice outing than struggle to pay a car note each month. I learned that's why so many women go back to their abusers, because they want to afford a certain lifestyle and have the two incomes to buy things. It's all about perception. I learned that true happiness lies in being content and having peace of mind. If I have that inner peace, then I know that my happiness does not depend on the outer stuff. I do not have to have my way either, because everything I think I want cannot replace the peace within. The house and expensive car were no longer a priority for me. My focus shifted while struggling to learn more about who I am. I know that it was God intervening because I needed true freedom from the baggage that I carried. I begrudged facing the demons of my past that seemed to haunt my life by reminding me of the times when I was a little girl, feeling lonely and wishing for someone to play with me, or when my mother would verbally abuse me, and how nervous I would get thinking she was going to whoop my behind. But sometimes there comes a day when you will have to look in the mirror and face the real person that you see. In a superficial way, I stayed in the mirror when it came down to grooming myself for the public, but not for seeing me for who I really was. I was a follower and a peacemaker. I did not want to make waves with people or stand my ground when I knew that some situations weren't right, and I went along with some things that got me into trouble. I believe that the people who cross my path are destined to teach me something and inspire and encourage me. I am more courageous to say what I believe is the right choice in a matter when it involves my well-being. Setting boundaries and limitations aren't always clear in the beginning of friendships and relationships. I had to learn that through trial and error, which we equate to life experience. My writing became a priority, but I noticed that certain people started to creep back into my life. I made a conscious decision to close the door on some of them permanently because I could see that God was making major changes in my life by revealing to me my priorities. I saw that it was imperative to keep walking toward following my dreams. Lana and I made plans to attend an annual women's retreat that I enjoyed fellowshipping for over the past 4 years. It was her idea to take some of my inspirations as bookmarks to the retreat to pass out to the women there. I wasn't ready because I was new with the writing and I felt protective about exposing them too soon. I was convinced that it would be a good opportunity to share my inspirations. I collaborated with Lana on how we could make it a success. I felt her sincerity and excitement in wanting to do the project. She exhibited a love for Christ that I had admired and respected. There was no other reason that I felt why I shouldn't have done it. We had grown to be great, supportive friends. The morning of the event, while riding to Wisconsin, Lana was driving. I remember saying to her that according to the map, we had 12 more miles before we exited the freeway, and she replied, "Not by the way she drives." She sped up as the car coasted along the freeway. Just ahead to our right, there was a cop waiting. Once she spotted the officer's car, she hit the brakes and we were pulled over. The officer asked the usual questions on whether he could see her driver's license and car registration. I sat quietly on the passenger side. I did not panic or get anxious because Lana said that this wouldn't take long while the officer walked back to his car. When he returned, he asked her to step out of the vehicle. She replied, "Is this a joke, officer?" With her refusal to cooperate in a timely manner, he started getting pushy and insinuating that she was speeding. She disagreed, and it got to the point that he asked her to step out of the car to handcuff her. While that was going on, I panicked and called her husband from her cell phone. The officer walked over to the passenger side of the car to ask me if she had the funds to pay for the ticket via credit card or cash. I replied that I do not know anything about her finances. The officer concluded that he wasn't going to get any money on the spot, and that's when he gave me instructions to move the vehicle from the freeway. I started praying as I followed the police car to the station. I had no idea how to get there, so I had to drive fast to keep up. Once we arrived at the police station, I parked the car. The officer's car went underground into the garage. I immediately went inside and began asking the officer at the window questions about the incident. He wasn't able to give me any information until they did their procedural check-in and paperwork. I rushed over to the payphone to call her husband to inform him about what was happening. He said that he was on the other line talking to Lana. She requested to keep her purse and cell phone with her, which gave her access to make the call. Then I waited patiently till I got more information before calling Lana's husband back. I asked the officer where could I go to find the nearest ATM to get the funds for her bail. By this time, Lana's husband was anxious. He wanted to drive up to handle the matter, but I insisted that I would bail her out and not to worry. I suggested to him by the time he gets there, it would be past the time to post her bail, and she would have to stay in the police custody for the weekend. After posting her bail, I patiently sat in the lobby and began to write a few inspirations. I will never forget the two I wrote, Grace and Friends. As soon as I looked up, Lana was walking toward me. I immediately put my papers away. I embraced her as we walked to the car in a hurry to get away from there. She was horrified by the whole ordeal and she couldn't stop crying. I politely asked her if she wanted to go back home. She insisted that we should attend the retreat, but it didn't matter to me because I was trying to comfort her. While I was driving, she became hysterical while talking to her husband on the phone. She yelled, "Drive, Naima! Drive the speed limit!" My nerves started jumping. I thought that I was driving the speed limit, but she was uncomfortable with my driving. I slowly picked up a little more speed while occasionally looking at the map for my exit. When we arrived at the resort, she was too emotional to get out the car. She insisted that I go inside and to not worry about her. I gathered my things and went inside, feeling sad and bewildered because I had lost my zeal for being there. As soon as I walked inside the resort, the conference was in session. I politely spoke to a few people on my way to finding a seat. I noticed a woman at the door to give the bookmarks to. I was uncomfortable about giving them out because I was no longer concerned about the inspirations. I wanted to know how Lana was feeling. Eventually, Lana came inside as she made her way toward the front of the room. The look on her face exhibited that she was hurt and wanted to testify about the ordeal. At the conference, during this time, testimonies were being taken, but the last person was speaking. As she made her way closer to the MC, she insisted that she wanted to speak to the women. She was granted permission to speak. As she became emotional, the whole place responded in an uproar. By her words and tears, she was, in turn, blessed financially and comforted throughout the rest of her stay. Lana was not content in her heart to drop the matter. Instead, she became enraged. I remained calm and quiet as much as possible. I felt that I had done all that I could possibly do. Her husband reimbursed me that same day by putting the money into my bank account. I tried to be excited, but I couldn't because Lana was hysterical and there was nothing I was able to do at this point. I just wanted the day to be over. The paperwork that she received from the police stated that she could protest the ticket. Somehow, when she mentioned the court date to me, I was hoping that she would decide to let it go, especially after receiving a donation at the retreat. I tried to help her see the good that came out of the matter and how it could have been worse. On our way home, I noticed that she was driving a little above the speed limit after we crossed over the state line into Illinois. I remained quiet because I could feel her anger and realized that she wasn't thinking straight. I contemplated on how good God was, and in spite of the bad that happened to us, we were still blessed. We finally turned onto my street. I thanked God as I unhooked my seatbelt. I hugged her and told her to let me know when she made it home. The day came to an end, and I was glad it wasn't worse. The next day, she called me at work to ask if I would go to court with her. I paused after hearing that she wanted to bring the media into the matter as well as hire an attorney. My understanding was that court was being held in the evening in Wisconsin. I politely told her that I couldn't work that out with my son being in an after school care program. Since moving far away from the old babysitter, there was no secret that I did not have a babysitter at my fingertips. She replied that it's all about Naima. My eyes became open about the matter. I had only witnessed a part of her ordeal. She was guilty on the one hand with speeding. The other discrepancy was her allegation about the way she was being treated behind bars. I did not witness how the officers treated her behind the scene, but I listened to her vent and showed sympathy toward her feelings. At this point, the most I felt that I could do was to write an affidavit on behalf of her case, which is what I did and mailed it to her, but she never picked up the letter from the post office. Lana called me at work to see if I had changed my mind. I knew that the officer was adamant about her response when she asked him was he joking, and he also had a laser camera to show her speeding. As I reflected, I prayed about the matter and felt that I needed to face the truth. Lana was speeding, and according to the officer, it was on tape. Sometimes we all take risks and make mistakes, and the outcome is not always good. As a responsible adult, the best thing to do is pay the price when we are caught. It hurts sometimes when we are exposed or caught, but it builds character and how we deal with our actions. How we behave says a lot about our character, and our children learn from how we live, not by what we say. When I did not give her the response that she wanted, she cried and hung up the phone. Around 2 weeks after the incident and her court appearance, she sent me via email an electronic Hallmark card. The e-card was wishing me the best of luck and goodbye. I was amazed at how crystal clear it was. I did not get upset or cry when she decided to walk out of my life. While pondering over the memories that we shared over the past 10 years, it didn't seem as though this should have caused a wedge between us. Then I thought about the time when she introduced me to Mr. Wrong. I shared a lot of my fears and bad experiences about men with her. I had some regrets after dating her husband's friend. I didn't hold her at fault for it because I realized that I had to accept responsibility for my own behavior. When someone speaks highly of a person, it is important to allow the person some time to prove that they are who they are projecting to others. People can change, and it's likely that they will as life goes on. During the few months of dating Mr. Wrong, Lana was relaying messages about what she had overheard between her husband and Mr. Wrong. He was discussing wedding bells about me. I started dreaming again and went along with the illusion. I should have gotten to know him for myself and weighed out if the things that I heard about him were true. Instead, I ignored my intuition and went off what Lana was conveying about him. Since having hindsight, the writing was on the wall, It was all a mistake from the beginning because we did not share the same faith on our religious beliefs. There is so much to learn. I did not stay in it long due to God's grace and mercy. He was not my husband, nor did I have the strength to stay in another broken relationship. Everything was being revealed about how Lana was disturbed over the fact that I had become aware of my God-given purpose. Prior to our uneventful weekend, she was working from home. She expressed that she wanted to know what her purpose was. I became quiet and replied that she should pray and seek God for it. I complimented her on being able to speak in front of people as the MC for her church. I always admired her courage to get up and do her thing. That is a gift when you can see the joy and energy flowing from people who are passionate in the arena of public speaking. She has a beautiful aura that exudes grace. I was hopeful that she would see it as being a blessing and gift too. I just believe that sometimes people can be close in knowing their purpose, but they do not want to accept theirs because they're too busy looking at somebody else's gift. I believe through all my struggles and tears, God saw my desire to give up on life because I did not have much hope for my future when I lost my marriage. That was my life, having a husband and my 2 kids together as a family. I feel that my gift was given to me at the right time. It inspired me to believe that there was a reason for me to continue living. Since knowing my purpose, I feel hopeful when I wake up in the morning. I'm thankful to God for blessing me with my gifts and the blessings that He has bestowed upon my life. I know that my life is not a mistake in spite of what I went through and the things I lost. I remember Lana sharing how amazed her husband was when he discovered that the bookmarks were mine. He thought that she had gotten them off the internet and wondered why she was so involved with preparing them for the retreat. Sometimes I wonder if this triggered envy or perhaps jealousy between us. As I write my story, I do not have any feelings of regret or loss about what happened between us because I was a sincere friend.